Hi, welcome to today's tutorial. Today we'll be learning how to make these beautiful blueberries on recycled paper using watercolors. So I am currently using recycled paper, but you could feel free and use any kind of watercolor sheets that you want. So this technique that I'm using today is directly painting on my sheet of paper using my watercolors, and I'm not going to be drawing really much. So here I've just taken some burnt sienna or a brown, and I'm taking mid-tone. And this is also an experiment that I'm doing with these recycled papers. I think this is a handmade paper and not exactly recycled. It could be a different process which they use, but it's really interesting because I like experimenting with different kinds of papers to figure out how the final effect is going to come. So this technique is also very important in developing your skill levels in your observation skills, because you're looking at an image in front of you and also painting at the same time. So enjoy my process of creating this painting, and if you can, then pick up your paints, paint along with me, and have a wonderful time while you do so. The idea is also to create like blocks of colors. Now that the block of the browns are done, I'm going to go on to these blueberries individually, where I'm going to be using different kinds of blues to create them. There's not going to be a lot of gradation that I'm going to do per se, in terms of taking water and then gradating the color down. There's going to be a lot of these color layering that I'm going to experiment on this paper right now. In this style of painting, don't worry if your proportions go a little haywire, especially if you're doing it for the first few times. It takes a while to figure out these things and to get better at it. But to do that, you need to practice. You need to make a lot of these kind of paintings. So the first step also, if you're a little skeptical about picking up your paints directly and doing them, then pick up color pencils and then just draw. Just observe, look at the image in front of you, and then look at your paper, and then just keep drawing everything without using a pencil. That'll give you a lot more confidence. And then you can always come back to these kind of videos from my channel, and then you can observe how I'm painting, and that'll give you an idea of how you can go about it. Each artist has their own style of doing these kind of live paintings. Maybe you can develop your own in that way. Notice I created a very different style of these blueberries on the top layer, and then the top 4 ones which are there, and then the bottom 3 ones I'm doing a very different style. So this is how it goes when it is in a live painting. There's no specific rule that you're going to follow. You're just going to follow your instinct, and you're going to go about it that way, and that's the most fun part of it. It's very relaxing, calming, and since there are no rules, you're not worried about staying within your comfort zone. You're going out of it, and that is very exciting for me. When I'm doing these kind of paintings, I also wait for the base layers to dry out to get an understanding of how the colors are setting. Like today I'm using medium tones, but this kind of a handmade paper, I've observed that it absorbs most of the color or the water very easily sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. So in this case it has, and then the colors are pretty bright, but if you notice, most of these elements are still pretty wet. So understand the moisture content in the air, figure out whether things are drying really fast or they are not. So these things will help you to understand how many layers you need to create, how long do you need to wait before you go on to do the next layer, by ensuring that the base layer has dried, or at least it's semi-dry, so that all the colors don't mix with each other, and then it'll become like one big blob. consciously or subconsciously, I also try to leave like a little bit of white space here and there when I'm creating these kind of objects, because it gives a very nice aesthetic feel to it. Now if you notice, the blueberry which is at the back has a really nice dark shadow at it on the right hand side, which is created by the blueberry which is in front of it. So that comes out really well. And also the second blueberry has these white patches here and there, so do the third one and the fourth one, and most of them have these like patches, so it comes in together really well that way. Most of my blueberries are still like semi-wet, which is why I'm able to create these multiple layers on top. I've also kept this painting speed as a natural speed. I have not increased the speed because I wanted you to understand how quick some of these paintings need to be made, especially if you are doing a live painting. Things change really fast, your environment is changing, the light is changing, so it's a good idea to like be a little quick in this. If you can't be, then just take a photograph of what you're observing so that the lightings and the objects don't change too much by the time you're done finishing the painting. Now that the blueberries are done, I'm going to create like certain detailings inside, small leaves and some dried flowers around it to add on to this entire painting. You can play around with the techniques of your brush. Like over here I'm using small brush size, I think 4 or 2, and I'm creating these spots using the tip of the brush. So these are different things which will help you create nice texture, and it will also not be too much on the face. If you're using a slightly bigger brush, then there is a high possibility that you might get bigger blobs instead of getting these tiny ones. And now that it's almost dried, the base, it gives a good opportunity for me to figure out if I need to add more layers like I'm doing here right now. While going to a darker layer, it's always a good idea to add a little bit of black or maybe a little bit of brown, blue, or even like a dark blue to your brown, and that will help you to create the next tone or the next shade, and that is very useful. So this way it is not too gaudy, because sometimes when you add like directly just black onto your brown, and if you add too much at one time, then you will notice that it is more black than brown, and you don't want an effect like that. So my base layer looks very light, which is why I'm now applying a little bit of dark brown, and at the same time right next to it I'm applying a little bit of the burnt sienna in a happy tone, because I want it to stand out a little more. One important thing when you're adding your layers is don't add so much of your new layer that none of your base layer is seen. In that case, then you might as well not create the base layers and just directly create the darker layers, so be a little careful about that. Now the main branch looks very beautiful, it has come to life, and it's time to make all the other areas become a little more brighter. It's also very okay to take creative liberty in a lot of your paintings that you're doing. You don't literally have to follow exactly what's in front of you. You can make your own version of everything, and I think that is what defines an artist and creates an individuality of everybody out there. So feel free to observe things and recreate them in your own style. At this point, most of my elements are pretty dry, which is what gives me a very good idea about my blueberries, and some of them are looking really dull, so it's time to add the darker layers on it. Now since it's completely dry, I have to use a little bit of water to gradate it down, otherwise it's like a big blob of dark color on top of it. There's absolutely no end to the number of layers that you can create in watercolors, and that's the beauty of it. As an artist, get to decide when you are satisfied with your painting and when you want to stop. Like, I'm going all over again, and I'm creating like some brighter colors, and in some areas some darker colors, because I want these blueberries to just pop out. I feel very strongly that it's the details which bring the painting to life. Like over here, it's these darker layers which have to be taken care of very carefully, and then the layers and these details that you add with your darker shades is what is going to bring it to life. When I'm creating paintings like these, I listen to some really soulful music. I listen to some lo-fi beats, and it just feels really nice. It's very calming. You don't know how it's going to turn out in the end, and that's the most beautiful part about it. So this is how it currently looks right now when I don't have a background color. And at this point is when I felt that I think I need to add something in the background, maybe some color to pop the entire thing out, which is when I decided to use a nice beautiful happy green to pop the entire thing out. So I'm just going around these objects. I want to give like a white layer around the object, but at the same time it shouldn't be like too perfect, like the same around every object which is out there, no, but just something very vague, something which makes it look like it's like a handmade painting, not a very critically thought of in terms of the spacing. I like very free flow kind of paintings, and that's the kind of style that I enjoy doing a lot more, so that's what I'm creating here right now. The brush that I'm using here is also a mop brush. This is a mop brush of the size 3x0 by Raphael. I really like this brush for these kind of detailing, especially the background, because if you end up using a regular round brush or maybe even a flat brush, one thing is it might not navigate through everything if you're using a flat brush, and even with a round brush what happens is sometimes it doesn't cover the area that you want together, which ends up creating these patches in your watercolors. So that happens a lot, so use your mop brush to your advantage for these kind of scenarios. In case you enjoyed watching this kind of content, you can consider subscribing to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. You can also follow me on Instagram and tag me over there if you're going to be recreating any of these paintings. I would love to see that. Thank you.